The first time Judith saw the old man, she thought he was dead. He lay across the dusty walkway like a forgotten statue, limbs twisted, one foot in the road, the other flopped onto the pavement. His ash-gray suit, once clearly expensive, was now streaked with Legos dust. His white shirt had lost its crispness. His tie hung like a loose noose. His mouth was slightly open. His eyes almost closed. People passed. Some paused. No one helped. The city didn't stop for anybody. Someone whispered, "Car hit him." Another answered quickly, "Don't touch him, oh. You go carry trouble." Judith stood among the river of bodies moving homeward. Her bag was light, her stomach hollow. Her day had been long. Another shift carrying blocks at the construction site. Another day surviving instead of living. But now she wasn't thinking of any of that. Her eyes stayed on the old man's fingers. They twitched, and something in her heart tightened. Judith looked around. The fear was thick. People looked guilty, but said nothing. One woman shook her head and crossed the road entirely. It would be easy to walk away. She had reasons: no money, no family, no connections, and barely enough food for dinner. She had just enough left for a ride home, but had decided to save it and walk. Her slippers were thin as paper. Her dress, once bright, was now dulled with time and sweat. Still, she didn't move, because above the traffic and murmurs, she heard a voice no one else could hear, her late mother's. "Judith, even when it's hard, you must be kind. Even when it's dangerous, help if you can." She tightened her grip on the water bottle in her bag. Her hand shook. She swallowed hard. Then she stepped forward. People stared. Someone hissed, "This girl won Interwalla." But no one stopped her. No one joined her either. Judith knelt beside the old man, heart pounding. His skin was cool, his breathing shallow. "Sir," she whispered, "can you hear me?" His lips moved faintly. "Water," he said barely. Judith opened her bottle. She lifted his head gently, resting it on her lap to keep the dust from his mouth. She tilted the bottle. A few drops reached his lips. At first, nothing. Then he swallowed. A tiny movement, but it broke the stillness. "Help! Taxi!" he whispered. "Home!" Judith looked up. Cars rushed past. The noise was deafening now. She stood, her knees dusty, and waved both arms. "Taxi! Please!" Someone stopped. No one did. She shouted again, louder. Her voice broke. "Please! He's alive! Stop!" Finally, a yellow cab slowed. The driver rolled down his window. "What had happened? He needs help. Please, just take him home, or a hospital." The driver looked from the white man to Judith's mud-stained gown. This one not Oyabo. If something happened, Nami dem go blame." "Please," Judith said again. "He's someone's father." The driver stared at her. Then, reluctantly, he sighed. "Oya, put him for back seat." Sharp, sharp. Judith bent to lift him. He was heavier than she'd thought. Her back screamed. Just when she staggered, a young boy from the crowd ran forward. Together, they hoisted the man into the car. Judith leaned in one last time. The old man reached into his pocket, struggling. He pulled out a phone with trembling hands and pressed it into hers. "Save number," he whispered. "Call a second chance. You gave me one." Judith froze. Her fingers hovered over the screen. She typed in her number, named it exactly as he said, "Second chance." She handed the phone back, stunned. "Thank you," he whispered. Then the driver asked for directions. The man muttered something low. The door shut. The cab drove off, and Judith was left standing there, covered in sweat and dust, her knees aching, her soul rattled, staring at the shrinking shape of the taxi disappearing into Lagos traffic. She didn't know who he was, didn't know if he would make it, didn't know if her name or number would matter. She just knew one thing: she hadn't walked away. Her own day had begun before the sun rose. In the tiny single room she rented on the outskirts of Lagos, Judith stirred awake on the thin foam mattress that barely separated her from the cracked cement floor. The window was missing a pane, replaced by a sheet of plastic. Her ceiling fan groaned, but didn't spin. She sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "Thank you, God," she whispered. There was no breakfast, just leftover Gary and ground nuts from the night before. She rinsed her face in cold water scooped from a basin. She looked at the faded photo of her mother stuck to the wall with tape. "Good morning, Mommy," she said. "I'll try again today." She wore the same ash-colored gown she wore every day to the site, tied her hair up in a messy bun, slipped her feet into worn-out slippers, and walked out into the Lagos morning. At the construction site, she mixed sand, carried blocks, fetched water. Her palms blistered, her shoulders burned, but she said nothing. At noon, she drank from her bottle. Just a little. She saved the rest. Something told her she'd need it later. One of the men on the site, Tunde, looked at her with a kind of sadness. "Judith, this job no be your own," he said gently. "You should be in office." She smiled wearily. "You get office? If I get, now you go be my manager," he said, laughing. She laughed too, but the ache behind her ribs didn't fade. By evening, they handed her a small bundle of Naira notes, crumpled, greasy. Her pay for the day. She used part of it to buy water and decided to walk the rest of the way home. That's when she saw the crowd. That's when she saw the old man. That's when everything changed. Back in her tiny room, hours later, Judith lay on her mattress, eyes wide open. The ceiling loomed close. Her fingers rested on her stomach. Her dress was still dirty. Her hair still messy. But something inside her felt different. She didn't know that across town, in a mansion she would one day enter, the man she had helped, Henry Brown, was resting under white sheets, hooked up to oxygen, clutching his phone. She didn't know that his driver had called his doctor, that nurses were swarming around him, that he kept repeating the same word before sleep overtook him. Judith. She didn't know that Second Chance was now more than just her contact name. It had become the thought anchoring him to life. She didn't know her phone would soon ring. And when it did, it wouldn't just be a call. It would be the turning point of her life. Judith didn't sleep that night. Not in any way that mattered. She lay still on her thin mattress, eyes wide open, staring at the cracked ceiling. The shadows above her didn't move, but her thoughts did, endlessly. Her arms were folded over her stomach, not for comfort, but to keep herself from unraveling. The city outside quieted as the night deepened, but inside her mind, everything kept spinning. Questions, memories, doubts. She kept seeing the old man, the foreigner on the roadside, like a broken thing forgotten by the world. His cracked lips, his shallow breath, his whisper, Second Chance. She didn't even know his name then. Still didn't really. She had helped because it was right. Because the alternative, walking away, would have haunted her forever. But now that it was done, the silence felt sharp, crushing. What if he hadn't made it? What if she saved her number on his phone and it didn't matter? What if someone else, someone with a suit and an accent, found it and deleted it? What if she had risked so much and disappeared from his story the moment the taxi drove away? She turned on her side, pulled her knees to her chest, and shut her eyes tightly, as if squeezing them closed would trap her hope inside. But the night stretched long, longer than most. Where a small alarm buzzed at 5 a.m., she was already awake. She moved like she always did, quietly, quickly, without wasting time. She dipped her hand into the plastic basin, splashed cold water on her face, brushed her teeth with a worn toothbrush, and put on her faded ash-colored gown. The same one she had worn yesterday. The same one for months. It didn't matter. No one at the construction site cared what she wore. They only cared if she showed up, lifted blocks, and kept quiet. She tied her hair into a rough bun, picked up her nylon bag, and was about to head out when her phone buzzed. She froze. No one ever called her this early. Or ever, really. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. Her heart skipped. She stared at it like it might explode. Then, slowly, she pressed answer. "Hello." A pause. Then a man's voice, quiet but steady. "Judith. This is Henry Brown." She didn't move. Couldn't breathe. His voice. She remembered it. Not from the road, but from something deeper. The way he had whispered, the way he had looked at her, like someone holding on to the last piece of hope. I'm here," she said finally, her voice almost a whisper. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "Because of you, I am alive." She sank down onto the edge of her mattress. "I'm glad you're safe, sir." Another pause. "I'd like to see you," he said. "Please come to number 10, Lakeview Estate. Ask for Brown Mansion. Come tomorrow morning." Her mouth opened, then closed. Sir, I don't understand. You will, he said gently. I just want to see the girl who gave me a second chance. Then the call ended. She stared at the phone. Brown Mansion, Lakeview Estate. She had never even seen that side of Lagos except in passing, from inside a Danfo bus or on magazine covers in barbershops. It was where the rich lived, where gates were taller than houses and the guards didn't smile. And now someone inside was calling for her. That entire day passed like a dream. Judith worked at the construction site as always, but her body felt distant. She lifted blocks, fetched water, mixed sand, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Every sound seemed quieter, every movement slower. Tunde, the kind worker from yesterday, noticed. You day okay? He asked. She nodded. You sure? She offered a weak smile. Just tired. He didn't press further, but he watched her from a distance, like he knew something was shifting. After the shift ended, Judith was paid her usual small wage. She held the notes tightly. She could have used the money for food, or transport, or even saved it. But instead, she walked toward a small roadside stall lined with secondhand clothes. She sifted through the racks slowly. She didn't know what she was looking for, only that she didn't want to wear her mud-stained gown tomorrow. Not to Lakeview. Not to him. After a few minutes, she found it. A faded blue dress with tiny white flowers. Modest. Simple. Clean. A little too big, but wearable. How much? She asked. 2,000, the seller said. She counted the bills in her hand. 1,500. All she had. Please, she whispered. This is all I've got. The woman stared at her, then nodded. Take him. You look like person way get better reason. Judith folded the dress carefully and held it to her chest. That night, she didn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't fear that kept her awake. It was something else. Expectation. Maybe even a tiny bit of joy, like standing in front of a door that had always been locked and feeling the key in her hand. She lay on her mattress, the new dress neatly folded beside her. She touched it once, twice, then stared at her phone again. His voice still echoed in her mind. I just want to see the girl who gave me a second chance. She didn't know what he meant, didn't know why he wanted to see her. She had nothing. No fancy clothes, no titles, no background. But he had called. That meant something. That had to. She finally closed her eyes just before dawn, her phone clutched to her chest. The next morning, Judith woke before the birds. Her hand shook as she washed her face twice. She brushed her hair gently, put on the blue dress. It fit better than she'd hoped. Her slippers were still old, cracked at the heels, but she wiped them clean. She didn't own perfume, so she used a dab of coconut oil on her wrists. When she stepped out into the street, the world looked the same. But she didn't feel the same. She walked with purpose, with fear, with hope. As she approached Lakeview Estate, everything around her changed. The noise softened. The buildings grew taller. The road smoother. The air smelled like flowers. And then she saw it. Brown Mansion. Tall white walls. Polished gates. Security guards in uniform. She froze. One guard stepped forward. Yes? Who you dey find? She cleared her throat. I'm here to see Mr. Henry Brown. The guard blinked, then checked a list. He nodded slowly. Madam Judith? She nodded. Come in. The gate opened. Judith stepped through, and her old life for the first time felt like it was standing behind her, small, quiet, distant. Judith stood frozen on the edge of the grand hallway, her fingers curled tightly around the strap of her nylon bag. Everything around her glowed with impossible beauty. Glass walls, marble floors, gold frames, flowered air, and she couldn't understand how any of it had to do with her. This wasn't her world. She had stepped into it by accident. Any moment now, someone would call security. Then he appeared. Henry Brown, upright, walking slowly down the staircase with the help of a cane, his face freshly shaven, his gray hair combed neatly back. He looked nothing like the man who had lain on the roadside the day before, broken and nearly forgotten. Yet his eyes, soft and steady, were the same. He walked like someone carrying time itself. Judith, he said, with that calm voice that seemed to silence everything around them. She lowered her eyes. Sir, come, he said. Let's sit. She followed him past the chandelier that swayed slightly with the wind from the air conditioning, past golden frames of oceans and mountains she had never seen, to a sitting room that smelled like quiet. The couch felt too soft for someone like her to sit on. She balanced carefully at the edge, her back straight, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Henry sat across from her. No bodyguards, no assistants, no noise. Only two people. The man whose life she had saved, and the girl who didn't know her own story was just beginning. "I've been thinking," he began slowly, "about what a person leaves behind." Judith didn't answer. He continued, "I've lived long enough to know that wealth, power, land, none of it means anything if, when you fall, no one bothers to help." He looked straight into her. "No one helped me. No one even touched me. Except you." Judith shifted uncomfortably. I thought you needed help, sir. And yet no one else did." She had no reply to that. "I've built companies," he said. "I've owned factories. I've had assistants, lawyers, investors. But none of them would have done what you did." Judith's eyes dropped to the floor. "You knelt beside a stranger," he said softly, "on a dirty road, with nothing in your pocket, with the whole city watching and whispering. You chose to help." She said nothing. Henry reached for a black folder that lay on the glass table between them. He placed it gently in front of her. Inside were documents. Not letters, not empty promises, but titles, deeds, contracts. Her name was on every page. Judith stared at it, confused, shocked. "What is this?" "This," Henry said, "is your second chance." "I don't understand." "I'm giving you this house, my sugar company, and the Bentley parked outside." Judith blinked. "No," she whispered. "No, sir. I can't. You already did. I don't deserve this." He leaned back. "Neither did I. But I got it. Life gave me more than I earned. And now I'm returning it to someone who won't waste it." She shook her head. "I don't know how to run anything. I don't even know what sugar companies do." "You'll learn. I don't have the clothes, or the voice, or the background." Henry smiled faintly. "And yet, when I was dying on the roadside, it was your voice I heard. Your hands that lifted me, not theirs." She felt her eyes sting. "This is too much," she said quietly. "No," he said. "It's exactly right. But why not your family? Your staff? Your managers?" He paused for a long time, then answered with a sigh. "Because none of them saw me when I was invisible." She didn't know what to say. Henry opened the folder and showed her where to sign. Her name had already been typed in. "Judith Adebayo," it said. "Future CEO, owner of Brown Sugar, Ltd., resident of Lakeview Mansion." Her fingers trembled. "Sir, this must be a mistake." He shook his head. "I'm leaving in a few days. Retiring. Returning home. But I want to leave something meaningful behind." She stared at the signature line. "I don't even own a decent pair of shoes," she said. "Good," he replied. "That means your feet have walked where mine never did. That means you'll understand people I never could." She bit her lip. "You don't have to believe it today," he added softly. "But one day you will." Silence. Then, slowly, Judith picked up the pen. Her hand shook as she signed. One page, then another, and another. Each signature felt like it pulled her further away from everything she'd ever known. From the room with the cracked ceiling, from the mud-stained gown, from the street vendors who called her sister out of pity, from the old men at the site who told her she should have been in an office. Maybe she was finally in one now. Henry smiled when she finished. "Welcome," he said. "You are now the CEO of Brown Sugar Company." She sat back, stunned, speechless. "Everything will be arranged. You'll move in today. My staff will help you. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You already did." Judith covered her mouth with her hand. Tears came quietly, but they came. Henry stood slowly, leaning on his cane. "There's one thing I ask," he said. She looked up. "When the world starts to bow to you, don't forget who you were before it did." She nodded. "Promise me." "I promise," she whispered. "Good." He turned toward the hallway, then stopped. "Come. There's someone I'd like you to meet." "Who?" "My lawyer." Henry led her into a study lined with bookshelves and soft yellow lights. A man in a dark suit stood by the window, holding a leather folder. He looked up as they entered. "Judith," Henry said, "this is Mr. Adelik, my personal lawyer." The man nodded politely. "Madam Judith," he said with a formal tone. "It's an honor." Judith gave a nervous smile. "Good afternoon." Mr. Adelik opened the folder and began explaining what she had just signed. The full legal transfer of company ownership, the documents for the house, the car, and her appointment as CEO. Judith barely heard the words. Her heart was still pounding in her chest. She kept waiting to wake up. But the lawyer was real. The papers were real. The pen in her hand was real. She signed everything he showed her. When it was done, Henry handed her a card. This is the number of the general manager. They will guide you tomorrow. You don't need to know everything on day one. Judith nodded. Yes, sir. And one more thing, he said. He reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside were 2 silver keys. One for the mansion, one for the Bentley. He placed them in her hand. They're yours now. Her hands closed around the keys like she was holding a fragile piece of the future. Thank you, sir, she said, her voice cracking again. No, he replied. Thank you. Later that afternoon, Judith stood in front of the window in her new room. It was larger than her entire apartment. The bed had pillows like clouds. The wardrobe still smelled of fresh wood. The curtains swayed in the breeze from the silent air conditioner. She looked down at the driveway. The Bentley gleamed in the sun. She touched the key in her palm again. It didn't feel real. She sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, Mommy, I wish you could see me now. She didn't cry. She just sat in silence, letting the moment wash over her like rain after a long drought. But outside, something else was already moving. Far beyond the gate, across the road, standing half-hidden behind a tree, someone else had watched the Bentley roll into the estate that morning. Watched Judith walk in. Watched her step into a world he believed belonged to him. His eyes didn't blink. His fists clenched tighter. So this is the girl, he muttered. This stranger. His voice was low, cold, sharp. He turned and walked away. But his mind was already made up. He would not let it go. Not without a fight. Judith woke up before the birds. Her eyes snapped open like they had never been closed. The silk sheets felt strange against her skin, too soft, too foreign, like they belonged to someone else. For a moment, she stared at the ceiling, listening to the distant hum of the mansion, wondering if everything that happened yesterday had only been a dream. The keys beside her pillow said it wasn't. But reality had changed shape. She rose quietly, washed her face, and dressed slowly. The cream blouse and brown skirt she had saved for church were clean, but old. The seam near the waist had started to fray. She tried to flatten it with her palm. Her fingers trembled. Downstairs, the dining room looked like something out of a magazine. A glass table, polished to a mirror. Toast, fruit, butter, a full jug of orange juice. A maid stood silently at the corner, waiting in case she needed anything. Judith nodded politely, too nervous to eat. Henry appeared moments later, dressed in a crisp white shirt and black trousers. He looked calm, but Judith could see the slight effort it took him to walk steadily. He leaned on his cane just a bit harder than the day before. Are you ready? He asked. Judith hesitated, then nodded. I think so. He smiled faintly. You don't need to know everything today. You just need to show up. The Bentley pulled out of the estate and into Lagos traffic. Judith watched the city blur past the window, the busy streets she used to walk every day, the people hurrying along with tired faces. She saw a girl not much younger than her carrying a bucket on her head. Judith felt a strange ache in her chest. That had been her, just days ago. Now she was on her way to take over a company she didn't yet understand. The Brown Sugar Company towered over the road like a proud monument. Its glass walls glinted in the morning sun, and the golden sugar cube logo above the entrance caught the light just right, casting sparkles onto the pavement. When they arrived, the security guard at the gate saluted sharply. Good morning, Mr. Brown. Good morning, madam. Madam. That word still hit her like thunder. Inside, employees paused to look as they passed. Some bowed slightly. Others whispered. Judith caught parts of their murmurs. She's the one. Looks too young. She came in with the boss. Henry led her to the top floor, the boardroom. Every manager in the company was already seated. The room fell silent as they entered. Judith could feel the weight of their stares, their doubt, their confusion. She stood beside Henry, unsure if she should sit or just disappear. Henry cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice firm but kind. "This is Judith Adebayo." He paused. "She's the new CEO of Brown Sugar Company." The room went still. You could have heard a pin drop. Eyes widened. Mouths opened. Someone dropped a pen. Judith stood frozen, her hands folded tightly in front of her. "I know this comes as a surprise," Henry continued. "But sometimes life chooses the unexpected path. I'm leaving Nigeria in 3 days. Judith will be taking over from now." Whispers broke out across the table. Henry raised a hand. "I ask for your full support and respect. She may not have experience yet, but she has something far more important: integrity." One of the managers, a stout man in a blue suit, cleared his throat. "Sir, with all due respect, who is she?" Henry didn't flinch. "The woman who saved my life when no one else did." Silence again. Then Judith took a breath. "Good morning," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "I know I don't look like someone who should be standing here, but I promise I will work hard to earn this place." Some of the managers nodded slowly. Others just stared. Henry led her on a tour after the meeting. The production floor buzzed with machines, workers loading sugar bags, forklifts moving pallets. Judith asked questions. Henry answered them, all with patience. She took notes in a small diary. Every minute felt like trying to drink from a waterfall. But outside, the storm was building. And it wore a suit. They were in the packaging section when it happened. The sound of loud, angry footsteps echoed through the corridor. A door slammed. A shout followed. Judith turned just in time to see a tall man in a dark blue suit storm into the hallway. His face was sharp, his jaw clenched, and his eyes burned with something darker than anger, betrayal. Henry's cane tapped once against the floor. "Daniel." Judith froze. So this was him. The man who had stood in Henry's shadow for 20 years. The one who had watched, waited, and been passed over. Daniel's eyes landed on Judith. "This is her?" he asked, voice shaking. Henry stepped forward slightly, protective. "Daniel, this is not the place." "No," Daniel snapped. "This is exactly the place." He turned to the workers nearby, who had stopped what they were doing. "This girl, this stranger, this is who you're giving the company to." Judith's hands gripped her bag tighter. Daniel pointed at her. "What do you know about sugar? About business? About logistics, payroll, distribution?" Judith opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no answer. Daniel laughed coldly. "That's what I thought." Henry's voice grew firmer. "You are out of line." "No, sir," Daniel said bitterly. "I've been in line for 20 years. He stepped closer to Judith. "Let me guess. You helped him cross the street? Gave him a bottle of water? And now you own everything." "I didn't ask for this," Judith whispered. "But you didn't say no either, did you?" Henry moved between them. "That's enough." Daniel's fists clenched. "I gave you my life, Henry. My loyalty. My time. And you gave it all away to someone who doesn't even belong here." Judith looked down. Then Henry spoke, quietly, but with steel in his voice. "She belongs more than you do now." That silenced the room. Daniel stared at Henry, something breaking behind his eyes. "You'll regret this." He turned to Judith one last time. "Enjoy your throne. It won't last." Then he walked out. The air felt thick after he left. Judith's legs felt weak. Henry looked tired, worn. "I'm sorry you had to see that. Will he try something?" Henry sighed. "He already has." Judith wanted to speak, but no words came. Henry touched her arm gently. "You must stay strong. That man will test you. This company may test you. But you've survived worse." Judith nodded slowly. Inside, fear churned. But something else was stirring too. Something like resolve. Later that night, back at the mansion, Judith sat alone in the garden, staring up at the stars. The flowers around her smelled sweet, unreal. She kept thinking of Daniel's face, his rage, his words. "You don't belong here," she whispered to herself. Maybe not yet. But deep down, another voice echoed louder, her mother's. "Even if the whole world walks away, you must be different." Judith wasn't going to walk away. Not now. And not when the real storm was still coming. Because far across the city, Daniel sat in a quiet office, staring at a photo of the Brown Sugar logo on his phone. His jaw was clenched. His hand shook with fury. "She thinks this is over," he muttered. "It's just begun." The morning after Daniel's threat felt like waking into a war. Judith stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. Her reflection looked calm. Too calm. But inside, her chest was heavy with dread. Not fear, something heavier. Like the air before a thunderstorm. She wore the same brown skirt, but this time with a navy blouse Henry had left for her the night before, folded neatly on her bed. A small note had come with it, handwritten in shaky letters, "Stand tall." Downstairs, the mansion felt unusually quiet. The staff moved carefully, speaking in whispers. Even the air seemed cautious, like it knew something big was coming. Judith barely touched her breakfast. Her hands were cold, her throat dry. The driver was already waiting. No words passed between them. As the Bentley approached the gates of Brown Sugar Company, Judith saw them. Reporters. Dozens. Microphones, cameras, flashing lights. A crowd had gathered outside the entrance like bees around spilled honey. Is it true you're the new CEO? Did Henry Brown really give it all to an orphan? Are you qualified, Miss Judith? Do you even have a business degree? Security rushed forward to shield her. She didn't answer. Her silence only fed the noise. Inside, the reception area was no better. She hadn't taken 2 steps before she saw him. Daniel, standing near the elevators, flanked by 3 well-dressed men she didn't recognize. Their faces were tight, clean-shaven, cold. The way they looked at her said everything. She didn't belong. Daniel turned to her slowly, like he'd known exactly when she would arrive. "Judith," he said with a calmness that sounded rehearsed. "We need to talk." Behind him, one of the men, older with a silver beard and eyes like polished glass, adjusted his tie. Shareholders, she knew without being told. The elevator ride to the boardroom felt like an ascent into judgment. No one spoke. No one smiled. Inside the room, they sat across from her, like a tribunal. Daniel remained standing, arms folded, leaning casually against the wall, like he already knew how this would end. "Miss Judith," the silver-haired man said smoothly, "thank you for coming. We're here to discuss the transition." Judith nodded slowly. "Of course." He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Let's speak plainly. We're surprised. All of us." Mr. Brown's decision was unconventional. Another man, round-faced with thin-framed glasses, spoke next. "You were appointed CEO, but you have no corporate experience, no board exposure, no management history." They weren't questions. They were verdicts. Judith swallowed. "That's true." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "But," she continued, "I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to fight for this role." "Fight," Daniel echoed. "Is this a street corner?" His voice was soft, but the insult burned. Judith took a breath. "I may not have grown up in boardrooms, but I know what hard work is. I've lifted blocks under the sun, worked 10 hours for a few thousand naira. I've survived." One of the men shifted in his seat. "I didn't ask for this role," she added. "But Henry Brown trusted me. I won't dishonor that." Daniel laughed quietly. "Loyalty is cute, but this isn't a fairy tale." He stepped forward, his tone smooth, almost sweet. "Let's be honest, Judith. You're not ready. That's okay. Step aside. Let the company be run by people who know what they're doing. We'll give you a title, a driver, a nice little salary. You can keep the mansion. Just stay out of the way." Judith looked at him. "Is that what you want? For me to be decoration?" He didn't answer. The room grew heavy. Then Judith straightened her shoulders. "I'm staying." Daniel blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said I'm staying," she repeated louder. "I don't care if the whole world thinks I don't belong here. Henry saw something in me, and if I have to earn that trust every day for the rest of my life, I will." One of the shareholders cleared his throat. "Miss Judith, the board will need reassurance. We can't gamble the company on sentiment." Judith nodded. "Then don't gamble. Give me 3 months. 1 quarter. I'll prove myself. If I fail, you can vote me out. But let me try." The room went silent. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake." Judith turned to him. "Maybe, but it's mine to make." The silver-haired man tapped his pen against the table. Then, slowly, he smiled. 3 months, he said. "Let's see what you can do." Judith's knees almost buckled, but she didn't let it show. Daniel left the room without another word. And Judith? She stood alone in the boardroom for a long time, staring out the window. Workers moved below like ants, Trucks came and went. Life continued. She had bought herself time. Now she had to survive it. Judith didn't go back to the mansion that night. Instead, she stayed at the office long after the sun had set, poring over ledgers and spreadsheets, trying to understand every corner of the company she was now meant to lead. Her eyes ached. Her head throbbed. She was still wearing the same clothes she'd worn when the cameras flashed in her face that morning. But she didn't stop. Henry had once said, "You don't need to know everything. You only need the courage to ask and the strength to listen." So she asked. She called in the production manager, listened to the marketing team, sat down with the drivers, ate lunch with the packers. She wrote things down in a small red notebook, the same one she'd used to budget her meals as a laborer. By the end of the first week, something strange began to happen. The workers started greeting her with warmth. Not "Madam" from a distance, but with respect. She learned names, faces, struggles. She found a logistics loophole that saved them $500,000 in one day. She fixed a broken supply route in Kogi. She called a sick staff member's wife just to check on him. She stayed late, arrived early. Word spread. She's not just a name. She listens. She cares. And across the city, Daniel watched from the shadows, seething. 2 weeks later, it happened. Henry Brown passed away in his sleep. The news hit like a hammer. Judith had just returned from a supplier meeting when the call came. She dropped her bag, sank to her knees. The man who gave her a second chance, the one person who believed in her when no one else did, was gone. The funeral was quiet, private, held in a garden he loved. Judith stood beside his photo in a plain black dress, surrounded by people in suits and sunglasses who had barely looked at her a month ago. But she didn't care what they thought. She spoke with shaking hands and a steady voice. "He gave me more than a home. He gave me purpose." After the ceremony, as the crowd drifted away, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "You thought this was over?" She turned. Daniel. He wasn't smiling. "You had protection before," he said quietly. "Now you're alone." Judith didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid of you. You should be." "I'm not." They stared at each other for a long, cold second. Then Daniel walked away. A month passed. Then two. Judith worked harder than ever. She signed new deals, recovered an old client Henry had lost years ago, gained the loyalty of the workers. Her confidence grew, not because she felt powerful, but because she had survived every test. But Daniel wasn't done. He began spreading rumors. "She's a puppet. She forged documents. She was never legally appointed." One morning, the company lawyer rushed into her office, pale-faced. Daniel filed a legal challenge. Judith's stomach dropped. The courtroom was packed. Media, business insiders, curious onlookers. Daniel stood with his lawyers, expensive, aggressive, cold. Judith sat alone at first. Then the company's HR manager quietly joined her. Then the production lead. Then the warehouse supervisor. By the time the judge arrived, Judith wasn't alone. The hearing was long, harsh. Daniel's team presented documents, testimonies, theories. Judith sat silent, respectful, calm. Then it was her turn. She stood, and she told her story, not as a CEO, not as a business expert, but as the girl who knelt on the roadside, who lifted a stranger, who gave water when everyone else walked by. She spoke with tears in her eyes, but steel in her voice. And when she finished, the room was silent. Even Daniel looked away. The judge retired. An hour later, he returned. Judith stood. After reviewing the evidence, the judge said, "This court finds that the late Mr. Henry Brown's decision was legally valid and binding. All ownership and responsibilities assigned to Miss Judith Apara shall remain in full effect." Judith closed her eyes. The courtroom erupted. Daniel stormed out. Back at Brown Sugar Company, the workers lined the entrance as she returned. They clapped. They cheered. Not because she was powerful, but because she had earned it. Judith stood in front of them, overwhelmed, smiling through tears. She raised one hand. "I'm not here to be a queen," she said. "I'm here to be a servant. Let's build this company together." And the crowd roared. That night, alone in the mansion, Judith walked into Henry's old study. She sat in his chair, looked at the photo of him smiling on the wall. and whispered, "I didn't run." Then she smiled softly and picked up her pen. There was still so much to do, but she was ready, and she was no longer just a girl on the roadside. She was Judith Alpara, CEO, the one who chose kindness and changed everything.